Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to cover basing of my miniatures and terrain pieces. So I really like to add a little extra to my terrain pieces. And I really like to play through my terrain. And I'll explain that in a minute. So you could build a building, and I have done that. I got lots of buildings that I built. But I find that you could just go around it or hide behind it. You could make an interior and you can play inside of it. So that would be playing through it. Or you could build it on a base and add basing to it. Or add some terrain, some plant life, something else so you can play through that piece of terrain. I'll give you a better example. I'm going to show you a piece of jungle terrain I built. This could maybe explain a little bit better what I mean. So this is a stone gate, a ruined stone gate that I built, a piece of jungle terrain that I built for Blood and Plunder. So if you look through it here, there's multiple ways that I can go through this terrain. I can have my pirates go through the center, they can go to the left, they can go to the right, or the battle can actually happen right here in this piece of terrain, in a larger battle map. So you can play through this. I can have an opponent on this side fighting another opponent on that side, using the same piece of terrain for cover inside of it. So that's what I mean by playing through it. So I like to build my terrain with a little extra. I could have just built a stone gate, and that would have been sufficient. That would have been something that I could hide behind or go around. It would have been an obstacle on the table. But I really like to base it. And this, really, it looks like a diorama. But I make all my stuff playable. So this is a playable piece of terrain. So that's one example. I'll show you another example I built. And this is a church that I assembled. Some of you guys might be familiar with this church. I've showed it mostly on my Instagram page. I kind of built this pre-YouTube, but it's another good example of playing through it. So this is a building which you can play inside. You can go right up into the bell tower if you want, but it has a courtyard. It has a cemetery back here, and it's got a few entranceways into the church. So you could play through this terrain. The battle could happen in this church, into this little piece of terrain, in the church, in the courtyard, in the back, in the cemetery, and it's not just something to hide behind. So you can play through this terrain. So in the one that we've been building in the last few days is the one for Blood and Valor. So that was kind of the last step that I wanted to do. So it kind of went into a third episode, and this was a very complicated build, mainly because I had to build an interior and exterior of the building. So there's a lot more to this build. But I definitely left some space, as you can see in the last episode, to do basing. Because I like to play through my terrain. So let's take a look at the final product. And you can see I got little remnants of a building here. There's kind of a back alley. And it looks like they've taken all the remnants of the building, all the broken pieces of lumber and rocks and stones and windowsills and everything else that's been damaged in the building, and threw it out in this scrap heap. And there's also a burnt tree. Somebody in the community recommended I put a burnt tree in the back there, and I really, really like it. It really adds a lot to this piece. And then I built an assorted amount of little furniture just to look like they're emptying out this building of the pieces of it. I also built a little rooftop in there, kind of explaining to how they get to the next level. Maybe there's a sniper going to the next level and using that remnants of the roof to get up there. So just kind of finishing the whole piece itself. But you can play through this terrain. I can go through on this side, or I can use this cover on the other side and go through this back alley. Or I could go into the building and use it as somewhere to snipe from, hide a unit of my French infantry in there, whatever we need to do. So we can play through this terrain. So I added a little extra than just the building. So in this video, we're going to cover the construction of the basing of this and how I did that. as well as a few steps I take to base my miniatures. All right. So if you guys like what we're doing here on the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information on when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down to the table and let's start crafting and let's start painting. Okay, I started this project by completing some furniture first. So I used some matchsticks, some square pieces that I got from Michael's, and some balsa wood. And really my plan was to build a couple tables, some chairs. I ended up building a bookshelf too, just to add some furniture to this, kind of basing that I'm doing here, this diorama. I just figured they would have some, pull some furniture out of that damaged building. So it's a bit of a tedious work, but I think I was pretty happy with the results. To get the scale right, I just, frankly, I just use miniatures like I always do. I just put them compared to the furniture, and that's how I sized it up. I didn't really do any technical figuring out here. So then I covered them in black craft paint like I normally do with all my builds. I just primed it with that black craft paint. Right, so then I moved on to adding a tree. I wanted to add a burnt tree to the back of this project, so I got this tree from Michael's, and I'm just gonna pull all these leaves off. I feel kind of bad doing it because it's such a nice looking tree, but I really, I suppose I could have crafted some bark in a tree, but I decided to go this way. It's a little more a time saver, let's put it that way. And so my plan is just to pull all these leaves off and then paint this as a burnt tree. You can see in the background that I've completed my furniture as well. I added my 3 brown colors that I always use to prime everything. So here we go. We finished the tree. I've pulled all the leaves off. It actually took some time. They were glued on there pretty good. So you can see this is what's left over. But you can see there's gaps where the tree was put together, and I don't want it to be seen when I put it on my base. So I'm going to add some of this drywall compound, and it's going to give me more texture on my bark here, and it'll also be a good way to hide those breaks. And I'm just going to use a dowel just to kind of give it some bark, kind of a texture to the whole piece. So I'm just letting it dry. You can see it's pink. Once it dries white, it'll be ready to go. And I will prime it with black paint and cover it with all of my browns I usually do. So I plan on doing some miniatures in this video as well, basing some. So this is a Blood&Valor French infantry model. And they come separate from their MDF base, so I had to glue them together. And then I added the same drywall compound to add texture to the bottom. I do plan on painting that and giving it with my usual brown treatment. But at first I got to sand it down a little bit. So once it's dry, you can go in and touch it up and sand the edges so it smooths around the edges. And I hit a few areas, but I didn't want to take it all off because I like the texture to make it feel like there's mud on the bottom and maybe mud going up their boots and legs, and it really gives it a kind of a interesting texture on the bottom of your base. So I don't want to sand it all off, just to make it easier to paint around that rim. So then I'm going to go to my multi-surface black paint and of course coat the tree and coat the bases of those miniatures. Okay, so then I moved on to, I decided I wanted to do a really small piece of a building left on the base. So I kind of, similar to the other build, and this is going to be micro mini, just putting some leftover bricks that I had from the previous build to just make a kind of a similar bottom to this corner. So it's just going to be in a corner of a building, really. And it's kind of set it up there just to kind of make like a back alley. So then I wanted to make some rubbled stone, and really all I did was take some insulation foam, cut it with my X-Acto blade and just got these like chunks. I didn't really make any squares or any kind of real rhyme or reason to it, just chunks of insulation foam. Then I stuck it into my, I got rid of my present. I've moved on to a coffee tin now. And I put them all in there. And now I'm just going to shake it all about. And that'll get those, have a nice texture to them. And showing you 5 minutes really. And then I got leftover scraps from when I made the flooring on the building. I kind of just kept them aside. I had planned on using it for rubble. I'm just showing you that bookshelf. I've already finished the chairs and the table. I actually finished it earlier in the project, and I had it in some of the videos I've already shown in my previous project. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to put them in, but I kind of wanted to add them to the rubble pile or have them inside the building. You can see the miniatures, all bases are all painted black now. And here's that corner. So I've already added the bricks on, which I've shown you that technique in the previous videos. And I kind of added a little bit of balsa wood in there just to give it a little damaged look. So that's that back alley I was talking about. And I just kind of used some tacky glue to glue all this together. I didn't use hot glue this time. I just used some tacky glue to glue it together. All right, so then I'm going to go over to some other components that I decided to build. So I wanted to build a chunk of roof that had fallen through and kind of put inside the building. So I kind of just, again, making a miniature version of what I built already. There's that bookshelf. I've already put the black primer on, same with the tree. Just kind of showing you all the components. I'm kind of constructing the rubble that I'm going to put in this pile. So here's I needed to make this back alley have some like a brick texture to it. So I didn't quite finish this side, and I hadn't decided which way I wanted to go with it. But I think I'm going to make it like a back alley, and then the pile will be next to it. So it's a good way for, I was mentioning in the intro, to play your miniatures through. This is another way that they could go through this piece of terrain. So then I got just a pile of stuff. This is all my rubble I got. I added the shingles to my roof piece. I got to address that cap, which I will. It's kind of fallen off. But anyways. Just showing you some of the components I plan on putting in there. Here's another like a busted up window, bit of a window frame. And yeah, just a assorted rubble. My chairs, a bookshelf. All these things I'm going to incorporate into the base here. So I'm pretty well done with those. I do plan on gluing them into this section here that I've created a space for. Now the roof I plan on putting on the inside of the building, and kind of I needed a way to explain how you could get to the second floor, and I didn't want to build a staircase. I'm going to say the staircase got destroyed on the back of the building, and I'm going to use that roof as somebody climbs up the roof. So just showing you, I plan on continuing to use tacky glue to put all this on. So now when I've glued all the rubble in there, I'll show you in a minute. I've already glued it all, and I just randomly put it in layers, and then I kept adding black craft paint on top. So when this is all done, it'll be glued solid, and the craft paint will obviously dry on top of it and make it a good solid piece of rubble. Makes it good to paint on, essentially. It's well primed now. So now I painted the whole walkway, painted everything, and now it's ready for our paint treatment. So we're going to the real brown, bark brown, the Pablo, and I'm going to use that camel on the stone. So I didn't quite show you, but I plan on doing that. So at this point, I'm going to use the 3 browns first and do the entire area. And then I'm going to come back and use that camel and hit all the stones that are in the rubble. And of course the walkway, essentially the back alley, all the concrete, the bricks and stuff that's on the ground. I plan on doing all that with that camel as well. Right, then I'm also showing you, as I'm doing this, I'm going to do the base of my miniatures as well, with those same colors. So I've shown this before in all my other videos. This is pretty well the set I use to to prime all my pieces, my terrain pieces and my miniatures. And the reason why I like to use the same formula, I just want to make everything look like it's part of the same world. So I paint everything and give it the same treatment. All right, so this is after I've added all the browns, and you can see I've added the camo already on the stones. So I do plan on going a little further with the stones and adding those miniature paints from Army Painter, that formula I like to use for stonework. Just showing you how to finish the bookshelf, the shingles, and you can see I've added a few more miniatures. I decided to incorporate a few more. The good thing about these projects is I'm able to catch up on my painting of my Blood and Valor miniatures. I got my pile of shame there I'm trying to catch up with. I really would love to finish this French army and have it all put together. All right, so Desert Yellow, Skeleton Bone, Necrotic Flesh, and the Mummy Robe. So those are the colors that I've used. That's my standard stone treatment. And I plan on dry brushing all those in and really adding a lot to the stonework in there. So this is after I've completed that. I'm really happy. It kind of matches more into the other side, so it looks like it's one continuous piece and not so much two separate halves. So then I added that Necromancer Cloak I've used a few times to add some age to my wood. And I'm just showing you, I did that all over on all sorts of different pieces of wood on here. I've added that gray. So then I use that Commando Green. That's that new green I've been starting to use, which I really like to add a little bit of, like remnants of some plant life on the bricks and stones and on the ground here. So I got my finger pointing everywhere, but it's kind of just illustrating that I plan on adding a little bit of green everywhere. And then I plan on using that matte black to add the explosions and make the tree look burnt and stuff. So now I moved on to adding this Battleground, brown Battleground. And when I do a lot of basing, this is usually the first thing I put down. And I just use some white tacky glue. That's an old paintbrush. And I just brush on the glue where I want it to be. So this way I can control where I put my stones. And I plan on putting a bunch in that alley, some in the rubble pile, and up the back of the building, kind of the where the exploded area is, and just it kind of adds really to the rubble effect on there. You would have small stones, not just big stones and big chunks. You would have some other smaller stones. So I'm assuming this damage happened not right away because it's obviously been cleared out and put to the side of the building. So there's been time for some plant life to grow back and some dust and rubble to accumulate between the rubble pile and the building. So I'm going to capture that by adding this brown Battleground, and we're going to add some grass here in a minute. But I'm just showing you this is how I apply it. I just use that paintbrush and just slap it in there. And really, I just grab it and dump it in. I just I'm just trying to cover the white glue. And then I'll tap it out in a minute. This is also a good test to see if everything's glued in place right, because I'm going to tip this sideways and make sure none of my rubble falls off. That's all glued properly. It should be good. I glued it, and I put black craft paint on it, so it should be pretty solid. So you can see I put it on a piece of newspaper, or it's a flyer. And really why I do that is I just dump all the remnants on there. And you could always just pull that paper up right where that crease is and then dump it back in your container. I end up, so you don't waste any of that material. The Army Painter brand, it's a little costly, but I really like the way it looks. And it is a time saver, not having to make your own. So this grass green and this steppe grass. So I like to use these two and mix them together. I really like the combination of the two mixed together. Gives me a little bit of dark grass, but I got the brightness of that green grass. So I'll mix these two up I'm not going to show you me applying them. It's the same way. I'm just going to add a little bit of white glue. I'll probably put some on the stones themselves, some of those bricks. Just kind of hit a few areas all around the area, just to put a remnants of some plant life that's grown back. Nature's come back in a few different areas here. It just adds a little bit of plant life. Then I had planned on adding some tufts too. So here it is all completed with a little bit of grass in there and a little bit of that Battleground. And I'm going to add a few tufts in there. And that's will be pretty well done. So I'm just going to move on to the miniatures. So now that all that basing is done, and really you could leave it the way it is right now. It looks like mud. If they're working the trench systems and stuff like that in World War One, that would be kind of what it would look like. I've contemplated doing that with just maybe some barbed wire and other things on there. But for these, I'm going to add some of this green grass by Army Painter. And use that white tacky glue. Same thing, just an old brush. I use a little bit of finer one than I used on the terrain there, but still same thing, just an old brush. And I just brush on where I would like the grass to be. And this is really a personal preference. For the most part, I try to balance it out. Usually if you can either go with all grass, or you want to do half of it grass and half of it stone. It's really, like I said, it's really up to you, personal choice. I decided to put a little bit of grass on both sides and have just kind of a muddy center, so it's kind of like a walkway through the middle. And I'm going to add some stones and a few tufts to it. So I'm just showing you, I just dump it on. Same thing on that flyer there, newspaper there, and so you don't waste any of this flocking. It is expensive as well, but I find it's worth it. Good time saver, good consistency. It looks good. So those are some stones by Army Painter, and they're kind of like just cork, to be honest. Looks like they cut up cork, and they make good stones for basing. So the bigger objects, I don't use the tacky glue. I go hardcore and put the super glue, the Gorilla Clear glue on there to glue it on. So I plan on gluing that stone, and I'm going to add that's a jungle tuff. And I add a woodlands tuff on there as well. That's that darker green one that's there. And that's pretty much it. Let that dry 24 hours, and by the next day it looks great. I do plan on painting around the base of it black with some black paint, but I'll do that after it's all dry. All right, so these are all completed. I went ahead and based all the minis that I was working on during this upgrade. Just showing you the final product. So really happy how they turned out. Just giving you a quick look. These are my favorite tufts that I use. Jungle tuff, woodland tuff. And this is actually my very favorite, is the meadow flowers. I really love that tuff. And there's that grass green I was talking about. And then the cork stones. So that's pretty much what I used on all these minis. Just a combination of those. And it's just random how I put them on. All right, so that's pretty much it. Let's take a look at the final product here. So this is our scrap heap, and our alley is completed. It's all burnt and twisted, and looks like we've moved all that rubble out of the building and dumped it on this pile outside. There's our burnt tree, and we got a little bit of plant life growing back here. So there's some furniture piled up outside, and we got that damaged roof that's inside. It kind of explains how you can get to the second floor. You climb up those shingles and up to the second floor. If a sniper wants to get to that second floor, and I've addressed that. All right, if you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information on when I do these projects. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one.